Meetles are giant beetle-like creatures found on Oddworld that are captured and genetically modified by the Viker scientists to be used by the industrialists. The Meetles is also a very popular rock band on Munch. Starting out life as very cute tiny pink larvae with big blue eyes, eventually they grow up into fully fledged light brown orange-eyed Meetles with hard exoskeletons, and shells concealing wings that somehow allow these giant beasts to fly. Meetles come in various sizes, ranging at least from about as tall as a Mudokan to over twice the size of one. It's understandable therefore that the native Mudokans use Meetles for various purposes including transport. Feel sorry for this Meetle though, having to carry this fat Mudokan on its back. Thinking about it, I wonder if a Meetle is able to fly with a Mudokan sitting on its back, covering its shell and therefore wings. Kind of funny to use a winged creature as ground transport. Initially I was going to say that they look like they'd be pretty slow moving on the ground, because it looks like they have 8 little stubby legs. They look like they go about half a mile an hour, and that their larvae caterpillar-like form looks like it'd have more manoeuvrability. Which by the way is interesting to note that rendered images of the larvae Meetles seem to show them with 6 legs, but concept art of them has them with the 8 like their older selves. Anyway, but then I realised from the concept art that the Meetles' legs are far more complicated than the little stubs you see on the outside. They're simply hidden underneath their shells, which makes a lot of sense. These legs look like they could actually move pretty fast with all that space for movement. This concept art also gives a detailed look at the Meetles' mandible, and this is quite gross. I just realised what's going on here. On the primary renders of the Meetles, I noticed that they don't have this little bit on them, like they do on some concept art. So I thought they might have ended up taking it out of the final design or something, but then I just realised that that's because their faces open up from the slit in the middle, revealing this appendage. It's a very strong antennae that they presumably use as their primary method of attack, being flexible like an elephant's trunk with a pointy hard weapon on the front that looks like it could do some damage, especially when you consider the size of these things. This part starts out as a feathery tendril on larvae Meetles. Meetles have also been seen with shells decorated and painted by the Mudokans, which makes me wonder if there are native tribes out there that worship them in a similar way to paramites and scrabs, or maybe this guy just wants to make his mode of transport stand out. Having not been seen in an Oddworld game so far, Meetles were apparently meant to play a part in Oddworld Munch's Oddysee, presumably being shown in Viker's labs being experimented on perhaps. But they definitely were going to be in Oddworld Hand of Odd, likely as a unit in this Tree Hugger vs Landmugger real-time strategy-like game that could be used by both the natives, we've already spoken about how the Mudokans use them, as well as the industrialists. Meetles are captured when young and experimented on by the Vikers, who genetically modify them into a new form known as Mugs. One absolute mug. Which, by the way, I always thought was Mugs with a Z on the end, but I've only found one other instance from over a decade ago naming them like that, and everywhere else they're credited as Mugs with an S, so I guess that's probably the correct way. Apparently it's the simple act of changing their diet during the larvae stage that decides how they turn out. Larvae that are fed on a herbivore diet of only plants and vegetables end up as the very peaceful Meetles. Whereas if the larvae is fed meat and grow up as carnivores, then they end up as far more aggressive Mugs. Seems pretty tame for Viker modifications to be honest, literally just, hey let's feed them meat. I was expecting something much more crueler from the Vikers, but there we go. Who's that Pokemon? It's Meetle! Meetle. It reminds me of the evolution of Pokemon, like what evolution path is this cute little creature going to evolve into? It can go one way or the other. I think the aggressive nature of the Mugs can be seen by the fact their faces are completely open, with fangs out and a whole array of their sharp mandibles ready to attack. Contrast this with the Meetles, concealing, as we found out earlier, what is presumably their only mandible, emphasising their peaceful nature. They only bring out their weapon if needed. Likewise, the Meetles are shown to be very rounded, while the Mugs have sharp edges, the most blatant difference between the two being the Mugs' giant tent-like shells. It makes me wonder if the Mugs develop flight capabilities like their Meetle brothers, with wings hidden beneath these odd-shaped shells. but I'd imagine they don't because the industrialists like to put metal, what looks like heavy armour around these shells, perhaps to prevent them from flying away if they can, but in general, gameplay wise, it seems like a disadvantage that they should have. Like, sure, they clearly have much greater offensive capabilities, but the Meetles are able to fly. It just sort of seems fair to me, I guess. But to back up this further, in a similar manner to the shapes of the shells, as opposed to the Meetles' very rounded legs, the Mugs possess far more pointier, clawed and more jointed legs, and concept art suggests that they have very fast manoeuvrability, being able to chase down and kill Mudokons, so maybe the Mugs are the dominant ones on the ground, whereas Meetles, can fly. It's interesting to note that the Mugs perhaps have developed less visibility than the Meetles. Well, firstly, for one thing, the armour that they wear seems to block their eyes a bit, but also the size of their eyes match that of their larvae forms, with two big lower eyes and a pair of tiny eyes above them. Contrast this to the Meetles, who still possess two smaller eyes at the top, but they're much larger and closer in size to their lower larger eyes. This suggests to me that the Mugs' vision hasn't developed much since they were babies. Back to their armour though, it seems that to protect them further and give them even greater offensive capabilities, the industrial armour they're forced to wear has a turret on top, which I'd guess is automatic maybe, could be unless the Mugs can somehow fire it themselves. This whole massive metal armour looks like it's designed to be very uncomfortable for them to wear, which is perhaps on purpose in order to make them more agitated and aggressive. Just as the Mudokons paint Meetle shells, the industrialist's mug armour is decorated as well, in this case with a nice zigzag pattern, because this particular mug survived Lord Voldemort's. I'd guess this is just some kind of branding from like some mug security company maybe. And considering it's a zigzag, it makes me wonder if it is Mugs with Z. These armour tents potentially suggest further the idea that the Vikers perform tampering to this species more so than just changing the diet of their larvae form, which by the way, as far as I know, the larvae Meetles don't have a specific name. I've just seen them referred to as larvae Meetles, perhaps hinting further that the Mugs are a perversion of the normal growth of Meetles, and the herbivore versions are the standard normal ones that they're meant to be. Even more interestingly, this concept art outright calls the Mugs medium Meetles, or at least I assume med stands for medium anyway. Mugs are used by the Magog Cartel as guards, and concept art shows them working alongside Sligs, protecting a building that apparently is designed to look like the Mugs, and I kind of see it, but I'm not convinced about that personally. If it is, then who knows, maybe it's a specific Mug genetic tampering facility or something, where in Hand of Odd, maybe you could build this building and that's where you would have taken the larvae you've captured to go and be turned into Mugs maybe. To me, in this image, it almost looks as though the Sligs are like the Mugs' handlers or something, staying close behind them and ordering them to hunt down and kill the nearby Mudokons. So maybe it's also the Sligs who utilise the guns on their armour, which I think look like miniguns specifically, and perhaps they use the Mugs as some kind of remote tank or something. Though of course, as shown in this shot, it seems the armoured Mugs are more like an upgrade, and the industrialists still make use of just your standard Mug as it is. I certainly hope that someday we get to personally witness the magnificent evolution of the Meetles and the Mugs.
Hello.